Are we all set?
It's all you. We're good to go.
Okay. Good. Good morning, good evening, and good night, depending where you are watching from. It's wonderful to have you all present for today's webinar, co-hosted by BYU Management Society and Scale Foundation. We're happy to have you in our midst today. And my name is Ebe Michael Dechuku. I will be making a brief intro of McConkey. McConkey is a full-time US designer who currently works for Family Search, a non-profit organization designing both internal and public-facing products. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in industrial design from Brigham Young University in 2021. Both pivoted to focus on digital product design shortly after graduation. Outside of work, he enjoyed playing guitar, working and creating memories with his wife and 2 kids. I would love to hand over the rest of today's webinar to McConkey for him to tell us more about himself, and so that we can be able to hear from the horse's mouth. Thank you very much, McConkey. You are welcome. Please take over.
Hey, thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be with you all today, and I hope that what I have to share can be of some use to you. I'm just going to share my screen here, and we'll get going with the presentation. Okay, can everybody see this or see my screen? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I've thought a lot about what I wanted to talk about today. And I've been working as a UX designer for it's been kind of on and off, but I'd say about 3 years now. And I wanted to share 10 insights that I've gained from my journey in UX. Let's see. So a bit about me. Like the introduction said, I'm happily married. My wife and I are going on 8 years of marriage, and we have 2 cute kids, and or sorry, 2 super cute kids who are almost 4 and 2. I enjoy, learning to play the guitar. It's something I wanted to do for a long time, and always being involved in learning something I really enjoy. Doing CAD or computer-aided design and some 3D printing, as well as woodworking. Those are things I picked up in my college degree and have been a lot of fun. And I just really like cooking or, making and creating, everything in that realm. For my education, I studied at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and graduated in 2021 with my bachelor's degree in industrial design. For those of you who haven't heard of industrial design, it's kind of like the physical sister to UX design, designing physical products instead of digital ones. So that involves everything from, cars to shoes to children's toys, consumer electronics, and just about everything in between. But here's some examples of the work I did in college. I think it's kind of fun to see the crossover between the physical design and digital design. But these are some sketches for a children's furniture toy, like furniture that kids could build on their own. And that kind of evolved into this idea of like a joint and dowel system, kind of a construction toy rather than strictly furniture. But that they'd be able to build whatever they want with this kind of modular building toy. This is in CAD or computer-aided design. I created a model with these dowels and plastic joints that the wooden dowels kind of plug into, so that they have kind of a cube framework, and then either fabric or wooden panels could cross it. But then taking these computer models and printing them, I was able to do some user testing with my nephews. and just get some feedback on how my designs were going and what things I needed to change. A later iteration of these plastic pieces required these rubber linings so that the wooden dowels would have a more snug and smooth fit. But it went through a lot of iteration to arrive at the right design at the end. These are some final renders of what different builds with this modular building toy could look like. There's another one. And then I made some more, like a physical, kind of more realistic prototype. I feel really lucky because going into UX, I know there's a lot of people that come from either graphic design or psychology, and there's lots of different fields that you can kind of break into UX from. But having a foundation in industrial design, there were a lot of really good transferable skills that came over to UX design, like user research and iterative prototyping and kind of working through a problem by doing and just trying new solutions. So moving into the 10 different points. The first one is intended as a joke, but we're all imposters. A term that circulates here in the US, and I'm not sure how global it is, but it's imposter syndrome. And it's kind of the idea that like, I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. I don't have the skills needed to do this job. And I would say that doesn't matter. I think that's something that everybody struggles with at times, feeling like you're not good enough. And I just wanted to start with some encouragement that all the hard skills you need in this job can be learned. But you as an individual, you have unique perspectives and experiences and approaches to problem solving that no one else can bring to the table in the same way that you can. And I would say that, if you're feeling like a bit of an imposter, like this project is just too big for me, having projects that feel like that is a good thing. I would say think of them as opportunities to grow and to prove yourself rather than letting them make you feel like you're incompetent. But I think if you give it your all and seek the support you need from your peers and your supervisors, you'll definitely rise to meet the challenge. Point number 2 is the power of networking. This section here, I'll touch on a little bit more of my work experience, but I want to focus specifically on how networking helped me to get each of these opportunities. The first was at the Missionary Training Center. It's an organization within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that prepares their missionaries for full-time service throughout the world. I worked here as a UX designer for about 9 months during my senior year, but I had worked at the MTC for about 3 or 4 years before that in several different capacities. So I'd been able to make good connections and build good rapport with them. I didn't have any UX experience to show in my portfolio because this was my first UX job, but I did have industrial design projects and a graphic design portfolio that I used to demonstrate how I think about and solve problems. And that, the combination of that portfolio and other creative design experience was enough to help me get the job. Here's a couple examples of the work that I did there. This was a search feature that was really critical for the internal web app they used. It allowed employees to find and view information about missionaries and other employees like their teachers. And I also got to work on a messaging system that replaced some really old legacy software where missionaries could communicate with their ecclesiastical leaders and their teachers so that everyone's on the same page about the missionaries' learning progress. My next UX experience was at a small business called Draft Homes. From what I understand, a lot of you are in the BYU Pathways program, and this connection came through that for me. So by the time I had finished school, I had my design degree and almost a year of UX experience under my belt, but I was looking for full-time employment and had only been working a filler job part-time for like 6 months. But my mother-in-law, who was in the BYU Pathways program at the time, she had a friend in her cohort who was a small business owner, and kind of found out that she was in need of some UX work. She and I were able to connect and discuss what value I could provide to her. And I ended up doing freelance work for her company called Draft Homes for about 6 months. And this was awesome. I forgot to touch on at the MTC, I was on a small design team. There was one other junior designer and a lead designer. And we had, I want to say, 4 to 6 developers. In this case, I was totally on my own. It was me and the business owner. That was our, little product group. But it was a lot of fun having more autonomy over the product and kind of creative expression, because she was really willing to just let me take it in the direction I wanted. This is an example of the work I did. It was a mobile app that helps people who are looking to remodel or just improve the spaces in their home. I can't actually show what the designs look like, so these are kind of abstracted to give you a feel of what the app was about without revealing the important things about the business. So this lasted for about 6 months before work dried up and she couldn't fund the project anymore. So I was looking for work again. And that's what led me to Family Search. I have been working here for about 1.5 years now, and I get to work on a full web dev team. We have 6 developers, 1 quality assurance guy, 1 project manager, and myself. We also have a UX intern who's with us right now. Our team supports at least 10 different products, both internal and external. So this is also kind of a nonprofit business within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that focuses on genealogy and providing access to records and family trees to people across the world. And my connection here is Jim Freeman. He's my brother-in-law's dad, and he also happens to be a back-end engineer at Family Search, or back-end developer. He actually helped my current boss to get started at Family Search. I think it's something like 10 years ago, but I had told him that I was looking for work, and one day out of the blue, he sent me a job posting for a UX design position at Family Search, and it was way above my experience level. I was thinking like I'm at a level 1 and this job was at a level 3, so like several years more than I was qualified for. But I thought I'll apply anyways and just see what comes of it. And I got an interview. It went really well, and I actually got to meet my current supervisor and some of the other designers that I work with today. I didn't have the enough experience for the job, but because they liked me and I had the chance to interact with them, they said, there's another position coming open here in about a month that would match your experience level. So I'd love it if you applied for that job when it comes open. I applied for that one, went through the whole interview process and got the job. And here's a couple examples of my work here. This is our flagship product. It's called Explore Images, but it gives people the ability to search through digitized historical records. Whether that's birth records or marriage certificates or census records, just things that you would need as you're doing genealogy. This is once you're inside the product and there's different results that come back for your search. And once you click on one of these image groups or albums, basically, this is how you're able to view the historical images and the information about it. This is another page that we're currently working on. It'll be released soon, but it groups these image groups into larger collections that give the records more context and hopefully makes it easier for people to find what they're looking for. My main takeaways from all of these, though, and maybe it sounds kind of cliche, but I believe the best way to get a job in UX is to have a really strong network. People are always going to be more likely to trust somebody that they have a connection to rather than somebody they don't. And in my case, every UX opportunity I've had so far was the result of a connection that I had through family, through friends, or previous employment. And getting these jobs still required a lot of work and going through the interviewing process, but having that network was invaluable. In the 6 months that I was looking for full-time employment, I applied for about 100 different jobs. And only two of them, I guess three, including Family Search, but only three of them I ended up going to the final round of interviewing. And the ones that I had connections to made all the difference. If I had no connection, I usually didn't get a second interview. But for the ones where I had some connection to the company, those always went further. So moving to point 3 is get experience. I want to touch on a couple different ways that you can get and showcase your experience as you're trying to build up your portfolio and make yourself more valuable to employers. The first is freelancing, kind of lower stakes for a company or a small business owner like I had the opportunity to. But when talking to prospective clients, I would say always be transparent and straightforward about what you can do. You don't want to promise something you can't deliver and be in a bind because of it. If you focus on the value you can provide, be clear about what you know you can't provide, and you could even touch on what you know you can learn. I think that would help to build trust with your prospective employer and kind of open the door for you to get that experience. But even very short-term work will give you valuable experience. So if you can, don't turn down experiences as you're looking to build up your work. Next is doing case studies. And this is similar to the personal projects, and we'll kind of touch on the differences, but doing a case study of other websites or products is a great way to showcase your thinking. You can go and find a website or a desktop app or a phone application and just identify an area where the user experience could be improved. It doesn't have to be the whole website. It could be a page or even a small flow or a feature, but just create a better solution for it. And be sure to showcase how you went about identifying and solving that problem. But demonstrating that will show that you have the skills to identify and solve problems, even if you don't necessarily have employed experience yet. Doing personal projects is similar. So rather than finding an existing product and critiquing it, basically, just find a problem that interests you and create new designs for an app or a website or whatever program you'd like that would solve that problem you've identified. And this is really great for showcasing what you're passionate about. And I think it gives others a taste of your dedication to being gainfully employed. One benefit of a personal project over a case study is that it really gives you the freedom to show off your personal design style or flair. Whereas at a company, like at Family Search, we have a design library, a style guide. And so I have a lot of control in my current position over what individual pages look like and how a user flows through the experience. But as far as the actual interface, all of that's kind of locked down. I get building blocks to work with rather than doing everything from scratch. And so for a personal project where you're not limited by a design style guide, you can really kind of showcase your own expression through these projects. Moving on to keeping good documentation, starting with portfolio creation. I've done this, unfortunately, a few times, and I would say there's nothing more frustrating than coming back to a project a few months after you finished it and then trying to remember and recreate the whole story so that you can put it in your portfolio. Because trying to remember like all the decisions you made and why you made them and what the research was and the people you talked to, that can be a huge headache trying to recreate that without any good documentation. So if you document things well from the start about your design choices and decision making, it won't be so hard to create portfolio projects when you finally have time to get around to it. Next is for stakeholder management. If you're keeping good documentation about the work you're doing, your product managers, the developers you work with, and the stakeholders can understand what's going on with the project at any given time. This also helps to demonstrate that you're really doing a good job as a designer. You're demonstrating the research, your findings, the decisions you make as a result, so that you're making informed decisions rather than just going with your own opinions. And that will help a lot to earn you more buy-in from stakeholders. If you don't have anything to validate your design choices, your designs and your work are kind of at the mercy of superiors or other people's opinions and criticism, and that's never a fun place to be. And the last reason to keep good documentation is to have precise builds. When you're finished with the design process and you're ready to give your designs to the developers, they need to be able to understand how to build it. The clearer that your documentation is, the more likely it is that your product will be built as you intended it. But they have to be able to see what it looks like, how it's supposed to work, and you have to communicate any details that may not be obvious just by looking at a screen. I work with a lot of internal tools that require calling on different databases and surfacing different sets of information. And for me, it's been very important to be clear about what data we need to be calling so that the developers know how to build it right. If you don't, you might end up with something like this, kind of a silly example, but you might have this as your expectations. And if the developers are unclear about what your design is, they're still going to build it and give it their best shot for how they understand it, but it might not end up anything like what you wanted. Next point is to manage your time. So first on continual improvement, kind of a disclaimer here. I'm still not great at this, but I'm working on it. Here's what I've learned though, is that it's okay if you're not a master at this from day one. Meet your most important deadlines first, and I think everything else will eventually work out. So keep good priorities in line. But I wanted to touch on distractions that you might run into. This is kind of what my day-to-day looks like in terms of distractions. So we have stand-up is what it's called, but it's a typically 15 to 45-minute meeting where all of our team members give a summary of what they did the previous day and what our plans are for the current day. Other meetings can take up to 1 to 3 hours a day, sometimes more, but usually within that 1 to 3 hour range. Designing bug fixes, so just general maintenance of the products we already have. Any quick questions that come through email or our messaging channels, other conversations, those can all take up a fair amount of time. And then you throw in professional development activities, any, secondary or side projects you're working on for the company, emails and scheduling, breaks throughout the day because giving your brain a rest is important. And even just the mental load of changing between tasks takes some time. All of this together, if I had all of these in one day, that fills up my whole day and I have no time for my core responsibility. So I say distractions, they are important, but that's separate from like my main job function. It's really common to be balancing several design projects at the same time. Currently, I have about 4 to 5 that are in different stages of development, and you may be, designing or doing problem discovery or conducting user testing, and potentially all of these things at the same time. And these are your main responsibilities, but it's often easy for them to take the back seat to other responsibilities or those distractions and even compete with each other. So all of these are important in different ways, but you have to be able to manage your time carefully so that you can get everything done. Moving to point 6 is to validate your assumptions. Designing just off of assumptions can be really expensive. The most expensive and inefficient way to test an idea is to have the devs build it. That can sometimes take months and lots of working hours, which is expensive for the company. If you don't test rough ideas through quick methods like email or testing platforms, or just your own user testing, virtual meetings, or even in-person conversations, you're going to be taking the long road. Building high fidelity prototypes before you've done faster and lighter methods of testing or idea validation, and you're confident about the features you're including, it's probably not going to be your best use of time. It's easy, I think, to think that we understand our users really well, but unless we're doing sufficient discovery and exploratory work, we're likely going to miss key insights about the problems they're facing. With that, I would say test ideas early. And one pitfall I've fallen into, and I'm working to avoid, is waiting too long before you start testing. I think, falling into the trap of like, I have to have something that's presentable or polished to start showing to other people, is kind of a missed opportunity. If you spend too long making polished designs up front so that when you show other people your work, it looks nice, you're likely going to have to make a lot of big changes that will be time consuming. On the flip side, if you test small, test quickly, and talk to users early on, that'll save you a lot of time later. Don't wait until you have something polished to start getting feedback. And consider other perspectives besides your own opinion, because it's easy to believe in your own ideas and to think they're good and not challenge them. And you should think your own ideas are good, but getting other people's feedback is also really critical because they may surprise you. For example, a product manager may not be willing to prioritize a feature that you want to include in the designs. And so you may have to negotiate on that. A developer can tell you if a feature isn't possible to build or if it needs to be adjusted so that they can actually build it. A user could reveal whether an idea actually meets their needs or not. And a fellow designer could suggest a better option or springboard off of an idea that you show them, and you'd end up with something better. This kind of ties into point 7, which is to use the right tools at the right time. Early on, you're going to want to use really lightweight methods, whether that's paper prototypes, just drawing out a phone screen, not using digital tools at all, or screenshots of wireframes that you can send in an email to just, get a stakeholder's opinion on, is this even what we need? You can ask general questions through conversations or through email without visuals, just to explain the ideas simply to get that initial feedback. I often have to be careful to not worry too much about the fine details at the beginning of a project. And like I said already, it's tempting to want to make it look nice from the start, but making sure that you really nail down the basic structure and flow through the product is going to save you a lot of time later. Because chances are when you do that user testing and somebody can't figure out how to get through your product, you're going to have to, go back and totally revamp, and all those details you spent time on might end up just being scrapped. Later on in the project, you'll want to move to medium fidelity prototypes. You kind of got things figured out at this point, and so just a few screens to communicate you know, the concept that you're going after and the basic behavior you want to understand from user testing, but you don't need to worry about doing in-depth animations or having all of your screens connected to have a really realistic prototype. The main goal here is to be sure that you're chasing the right ideas and not to have something that just looks pretty. Near the end is where you would want to start working on those high fidelity prototypes that look and feel very much like the website would. These are helpful for final testing, confirming previous testing findings, and kind of fine-tuning the interaction design. I would say though this is not always necessary depending on the product. A lot of the internal tools that I've worked on over the last year and a half haven't needed a really high fidelity prototype. Just some basic screens they can click through was enough, but I didn't have to make sure that every button has a hover state or you know, that screen transitions look just right. And the reason for that is these take the longest to put together. There have been a couple projects where I did need to have a very realistic prototype because they were for the general public. And sometimes they take up to a week to create, which is a lot of working hours, you know, to make sure that all the links and interactions work properly. So a couple examples here. These are sketch pages I did when I was freelancing and doing work on that mobile design. Blurred out a bit because I can't like show everything. But I went through a couple dozen pages just sketching out ideas and working through ideas quickly so that you can, you know, make the best use of your time and work as light and fast as you can. This, though, is an example of a higher fidelity prototype for the image search that I showed you before. Each of these cards represents a subset of images within a larger album, and these cards kind of depict what information is contained within them. And so I wanted to make sure that as a user was expanding and collapsing these cards, they wouldn't lose the context of where they're at and kind of be disoriented by, you know, shifting tiles. So in this case, it was really helpful to have a high fidelity prototype where I spent a lot of time on these interactions, but most of the time that probably won't be the case. My 8th point is to collaborate often. It's so easy to get stuck in your own thinking, at least for me. I'll get tripped up on problems and you know, you can noodle over them for hours and think like, oh, should I go this way or that way? Both seem like good options. I'm not really sure which one to do. And I've found like I can eventually find a solution on my own, but if I reach out to people, they can get me unstuck way faster than I could on my own. If you are working in a remote capacity, it can be a lot harder to collaborate with others and have the same kind of naturally occurring conversations that you would while in an office. But getting feedback doesn't just have to be with other designers. You should be doing user testing, but you can also check your thinking against, you know, people you live with or your friends and just, you know, get their feedback. I'll often ask my wife. I guess one caveat here is you just want to make sure that if you're working for like a larger company that you're not sharing internal data that, you know, shouldn't be shared outside. So just be careful, but make sure that you're reaching out and getting other people's feedback regularly. And again, getting help. Other people can help you out of a rut, whether that's a design problem you're stuck on, or if you're having a hard time clarifying what the product needs are. or different, for me, I deal with a lot of different internal teams that use our products. And so making sure that I understand their needs clearly. I'll talk to them and to other members of my team that may understand it better. And that helps me to work more efficiently. But I'll say in closing on this point that some of the best ideas I've put into my designs were the result of brainstorming sessions with other people. Combining multiple perspectives and the brain power of many almost always generates better ideas than any one person could come up with on their own. And this one I think is really important, is to be an expert in a few different ways, but primarily about your product space. In your product space, I mean the products that you're assigned to, the users that use that product, how your product integrates with other products in the company, and kind of things of that nature. But the more you know about your space and project timelines and how the developers work, the better you can work with stakeholders and explain difficult concepts. This will give you credibility and helps you give strong rationale for your designs. I'd encourage you to understand everything you can about your product so that you can talk to others about it coherently and intelligently. But also try to relate or understand related products within the business, if applicable, so that you can think at a bigger scale to create a more cohesive experience for users. So a couple examples here. Think of like Microsoft, where you've got Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and PowerPoint and other products, and they all have a very similar feel to them, but they're not going to have a single designer working on all of those products. That's way too big for one person. And so in order to create a consistent experience across their products, I would assume that their designers have to work together, collaborate to make sure that if they make a change in one product, that it's still going to be consistent with the other existing products. So whether that's Microsoft or Adobe Creative Cloud, or any larger company with multiple products, that you're going to want to think bigger than just the projects you're assigned to. And that's actually the case at Family Search as well. We have one website and a couple small mobile apps. And, as a user, you come in and you see that website and it just feels like one product, or it should. There's no reason to think that that's actually, 20 different products that are all stitched together. But we have a fairly large design team, somewhere between 20 and 30 designers that work on, like each designer works on their own set of products. And like I mentioned, I work on the image search, but that integrates with the record search. So if you're searching just by names, as well as with a suite of internal tools. And I try to be careful about making sure that as I'm designing new products, I'm staying consistent with what the experience is in other designers' products, so that when a user does come to our website, it feels like a cohesive experience throughout, rather than little clusters of different products. So being an expert in working with developers is also really important. This isn't to say that you have to be a developer yourself or to understand how to code. That's you can, and kudos to you, but most of the time it's not required. But if you can learn to listen to the devs and understand how they talk, and even understanding basic things about the systems that they work with and just understanding how they build things, will be a great asset to you. Because if you know what your limits and constraints are, as far as building a product goes, it'll make it a lot easier for you to ask for what you want and to be able to brainstorm solutions when devs have concerns or think something isn't feasible. This happened to me a number of times when I was working at the MTC. I proposed designs, and our developers were sometimes unwilling to kind of stretch their brains on how we could develop different products. And so because I didn't want to always be told, no, we can't do that, I would try to say like, well, could we do it this way, and approach the same need or problem from a different perspective. And often, whether I was spot on or not, that helped them to think about it in a different perspective as well. And often they'd come back and say, you know what, I've been thinking about this. I think we can do it if we tweak your designs a little bit. So being an expert about your product space in that way helps ensure that you can brainstorm together to find the best solution, rather than having to always compromise on your designs. Lastly, on this point is to work with product managers. You'll likely have different products or projects that you're working on, and conflicting priorities and timelines can be a tough challenge. This kind of ties back to the documentation point again. If you don't have strong reasoning for your design choices, a conflicting priority may result in your ideas being cut or altered in a way that isn't ideal for your product. But if you're prepared, you can professionally, so to speak, fight for or champion your ideas and designs, and that gives you more leverage in the negotiations of what's the most important. Lastly here is to keep it simple. Dieter Rams, pictured here, he's a famous industrial designer, and he established 10 principles for good design that I think are applicable to all design, whether that's physical or digital. And this one's my favorite of those 10. He said, good design is as little design as possible. In practice, I think this means work hard to make your designs as simple as possible. Don't be afraid to cut out features in order to prioritize the best ones. Whether that's just making your product simpler overall, or if you have a lot of ideas that could go into your product and you have to scale back for the initial product release, knowing how to prioritize the best features will be really helpful for your end users. If your product is complicated, it might be hard to use, but if it's too simple, it may not provide the value that your users need. So finding the balance between the two is tough to get it right, but it's absolutely worth the effort. You'll create cleaner and better designs that resonate really well with people. And for each of you individually, to keep it simple, I just want to say, believe in yourself, to work hard and know that you can do this, and work hard to get all the experience you can. And presenting yourself, don't make it too complicated. Just present you and your work in the way you think, in the clearest way you can. And I think that's kind of the key to success in its essence. But best of luck to all of you in your own UX journeys, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, my country, for this wonderful presentation you've made. This presentation is of great useful to us who attended this webinar. From our hearts, we say thank you. At this point, we would love to entertain questions. Those of us who have questions should indicate by raising up our hands, so that I will call out you so that for you to ask your questions.
Let's see, for questions, is it best to put we put them in the chat? Would that be okay?
Okay.
Yeah. You can also put it on the chat. Okay, I think I have a question. I would love to
Go ahead,
ask,
please.
can you share any tips or resources for creating effective wireframe, especially when it comes to prototyping and mockups?
Yeah, so wait for resources. I think the best advice I have for wireframing is to keep it really lightweight from the start. Like I said, to just start with paper sketches if you want, or as simple as like empty boxes with a black border. As you're working in Figma or other wireframing tools, just using simple boxes and text to communicate what the overall structure of the web page is. That's going to be the best place to start. And then as you feel more certain about what the page should be structured like, then you can start filling in with the nicer looking details. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Um,
Just to add, what kind of software do you recommend for someone who who have been using most of the work, doing most of their works pertaining to design? What kind of software do you recommend?
I use almost exclusively Figma. That's what we use at Family Search. And I used Sketch before when I was at the MTC. But moving from Sketch to Figma has been awesome. The prototyping is so much easier, and they're constantly innovating new features that make our workflows easier. So I really love Figma, but there are lots of good options out there. Let's see, I'm seeing
Uh,
two questions in the chat.
it's saying that I don't know if you have any experience related to Adobe SD.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I want to know if you have been able to use Adobe SD for a while, or you have not been able to use it.
Good question. So I've used Adobe XD a little bit. When I was working at the MTC, Sketch felt kind of limited as far as being able to do interaction design. I think one example I remember is I had a table that had different rows of data, and I wanted to be able to have a hover state where if I hover over a row, then related buttons appear. Like if you have a Gmail account, you'll see that with different emails. When you hover over an email, applicable options will appear in the row. And you couldn't do that in Sketch. They didn't have a way to do that. But Adobe XD was a little bit more capable with prototyping. So I appreciated it for that. And Figma thankfully does both. So I don't have much need to use other tools at the moment, but that's not to diminish other tools that are out there.
Thank you, Scratch. Thank you. I think we have one question from Okoro. Okoro asks, do you advise a UX designer to learn no code or learn programming language?
Yeah, so I wish I knew how to code. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would not at all steer you away from it. I took a coding class when I was in Brigham Young University, and it was really tough for me. That was actually before I got into industrial design. So I kind of steered away from programming because it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But now working in UX, I wish I understood programming better, for the sake of being able to work with the devs at a more capable level and understand the things that they're talking about and know how to brainstorm solutions with them. So if you know how to code or if you're interested in that, I'd say it can only benefit you to have more skills. I see another one in the chat asking if I work from home or in office, and most days I work from home. I end up going into the office about once a month for team meetings, but most days it's just remote. And yes, I can share my LinkedIn profile. Let's see. I can grab that after the meeting, and could I pass that along through one of our SCEP hosts here? Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah, we can get out. We'll get out to everyone a copy of the presentation, your deck. We'll get it posted out there to everyone. We'll also make sure that that the recording of this webinar gets posted up on our social media and is available, so people that weren't able to come can get to the information. There are 57 current students in the UX design program for SCEP, and I think only about 18 of them have finished it. So there are a bunch of those that we'll target as well to make sure they get this information directly, so that they have a chance to consume it. You did a great job. All 10 of the key points resonate, at least for me, they did in all kinds of ways, right? It's I put a comment into chat when Elder Klebengott was talking to us about starting SCEP. He made an interesting, he gave some counsel that I thought was really interesting, and Kate and I have fallen back on it many times. And he said this idea of iterating rapidly and finding your way forward as you go. His comment was, you don't I'm trying to remember exactly. How did he say it, Kate? Something about you prototype as you go, you don't prototype to go, or you don't, what was it exactly? Do you remember it, Kate?
I think you nailed it. I think it was the pilot to go, but
Yeah,
pilot as you
pilot.
go. You know, you don't pilot to go, but you pilot as you're moving forward, and as you're working things out, you know, you're constantly moving forward and not getting stuck in this decision paralysis, right? Of the best way to do it, or, you know, but as you're moving forward, then you're testing your pilots.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into that imposter syndrome that, you know, Chris, you started with, that we have to have enough confidence to move forward. I mean, I have heard this anecdotally. I need to go find the source, but I remember someone saying that Brigham Young once taught, "I believe in being a hypocrite. It's the only way I can move forward." And, you know, you have to own a reality that may not be real yet in order for it to become real. And that's, you know, it's tied to faith, it's tied to all kinds of things that we're asked to do. And in our job transition and going from skills to actual being paid, I think all of us jump into water that's deeper than we want to be in. And, you know, and it's a scary place to go because we have no clue how we're going to do this. But in the process of moving, we become competent as long as we approach it with humility and with grace and with an understanding of our weaknesses. The Lord can make our weaknesses strengths. And he always does, right? He rallies around, and the gift of his love and his support, he never leaves us, you know, on our own. And so I loved all of especially the ideas around, you've got a network, you've got more support than you think. There's lots of people that can help. Be proactive in the way you go forward is one of the key messages that I took away from all of these great items that you presented today. So from my end, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, I just want to add one note to that. I would say in every capacity that I've moved to, you know, whether that was my first UX job or my first time freelancing or my first time working as here at Family Search, a designer over 10 plus products, I felt incompetent every single time. Each time I was like, I don't think I'm qualified for this. I know I can learn it and I can figure it out, but I definitely don't have all of the skills that this job posting is talking about. And like I said, you rise to meet the challenge. You'll learn the skills as you go. So don't be afraid. Just go forward knowing that God will help you figure it out. And if you work hard, it'll all work out right.
Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate your time and sharing your insight with us today. We hope we'll connect with you on LinkedIn as you are going to share your LinkedIn information with us so that we can be able to chat to you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
I'd love to be part of your network. So please reach out.
Over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you everyone for the inspired question that we all have asked. And in absence of any further question, we'd love to put this meeting to an end. And from our hearts, we say thank you to Chris McConkie for this wonderful presentation, especially from the SCEP Foundation and BYU Management Society. We say thank you very much. And it's wonderful to also announce to each and every one of us that we will be having a webinar coming up again on the 30th of this month. The topic of the webinar will be learning how to webinar is learning how to learn from AI perspective. We will publish the flyer in no distance time. Please inform your friends about this upcoming webinar and make our time to also attend this webinar. BYU Management Society are out there to change the narrative and the perspective in Africa. And we say thank to each of these organizations for what they are doing. And it's left for us to be able to open our hearts to learn from this wonderful organization. Thank you. As part of our tradition, we love to give a big hug to McConkie for his wonderful presentation. So please, can we on our camera so that we take a group pictures, and also while we take give him a big hug.
And the hugs right back.
Yeah,
Please, on your camera.
Thank you so
Exactly.
much.
Big hugs. All right, you guys, well done. Chris, thank you so much for helping. We look forward to creating a longer term relationship with all the designers to act as mentors and help. So it'll be fun. This is not over. Thanks for helping.
Of course, anytime.